The text message arrived at 2:47 p.m. on an ordinary Wednesday in March. Rebecca Torres stared at her phone in the supermarket parking lot, the screen casting a pale glow across her face as shoppers moved past her frozen car. The message was from her sister-in-law. "Call me now. Do not talk to David first." Rebecca's hands trembled as she read it again. In 8 years of marriage, Elena had never contacted her like this. Never with that kind of urgency. Never with that kind of warning. What Rebecca didn't know was that in the next 72 hours, her entire life would be revealed as an elaborate fiction. The man she'd built a life with in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, wasn't who he claimed to be. The wedding ceremony she treasured in her memory had no legal standing. The joint bank accounts they shared were based on forged documents. And the baby she was carrying, their first child, due in 4 months, was about to become the center of a legal nightmare that would expose a web of deception spanning 3 states, 2 decades, and at least 4 other women. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Rebecca Marie Torres was 34 years old, a dental hygienist with a steady laugh and a tendency to see the best in people. She'd grown up in Tempe, graduated from Arizona State, and spent her 20s building a small circle of close friends while watching everyone around her get married. By the time she met David Chen at a hospital charity fundraiser in 2016, she'd almost stopped believing it would happen for her. Our David was 41, handsome in an understated way, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confidence that comes from success. He told her he was a medical equipment consultant who traveled frequently for work. He told her he'd been divorced once, years ago, and hadn't found the right person since. He told her she was everything he'd been looking for. They were married 14 months later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden in Scottsdale. 50 guests, sunset vows, a reception with string lights, and Rebecca's favorite flowers. Her mother cried. Her father walked her down the aisle. David's family couldn't make it from California, he explained, because his mother was recovering from surgery. Rebecca understood. She was marrying a good man with a demanding career and complicated family dynamics. That was normal. That was life. For 8 years, their marriage looked like the kind of stability Rebecca had always wanted. David traveled Monday through Thursday most weeks, consulting for hospitals across the Southwest. Rebecca worked her regular schedule, met friends for wine on Friday nights, and dreamed about starting a family. They bought a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. They talked about baby names. They argued about small things like any couple. His habit of leaving coffee cups everywhere, her tendency to overbook their weekends. They made love on Sunday mornings and fell asleep watching television. They were normal, but normal was a performance. And on that Wednesday in March, the performance was about to end. Rebecca called Elena from the parking lot, her groceries forgotten in the trunk. Her sister-in-law's voice was tight, uncontrolled, like someone trying not to scream. "Where are you right now? Are you alone?" Rebecca confirmed she was. "Good. Stay there. I'm sending you a link. Open it, but sit down first." The link led to a Facebook page. A woman named Jennifer Paulson, living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The profile photo showed a blonde woman in her late 30s, smiling at the camera, smiling next to David Chen. The caption read, "Celebrating 15 years with my amazing husband. Here's to forever." Rebecca's vision tunneled. The parking lot sounds, car doors, shopping carts, distant conversations, became muffled and strange. 15 years. That was impossible. That was insane. She'd been married to David for 8 years. Unless she hadn't been married to him at all. Elena's voice cut through the fog. "There's more, Becca. Keep scrolling." Rebecca's fingers moved automatically, swiping through Jennifer Paulson's photos. There were dozens of images. Jennifer and David at a restaurant. Jennifer and David on a beach. Jennifer and David in front of a house that wasn't in Phoenix. Jennifer and David with 2 children. A boy and a girl, maybe 10 and 8 years old. "I found her by accident," Elena explained, her voice cracking. "I was trying to tag David in a family photo, and Facebook suggested his profile, but it wasn't his profile. It was a different account, David C. Paulson, and when I clicked on it, I found her. Rebecca sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes, scrolling through the evidence of another life. A life where David wasn't David Chen, medical equipment consultant with a condo in San Diego and an estranged family. And a life where he was David Paulson, father of two, husband of 15 years, living in a suburb of Albuquerque with a woman who had no idea that Rebecca Torres existed. The timeline was impossible. David had been in Albuquerque with Jennifer while he was courting Rebecca in Phoenix. He'd been at soccer games and school plays while claiming to be at medical conferences. He'd been living two complete lives, 420 miles apart for at least 8 years. The question that paralyzed Rebecca wasn't how he'd done it. It was what else had he lied about. If their marriage wasn't real, what was? If the man she loved didn't exist, who had she been sleeping next to for 8 years? And what did this mean for the baby growing inside her? Rebecca drove home on autopilot, her mind racing through every memory, every conversation. Every moment she'd accepted David's explanations without question. The house felt different when she walked through the door. The framed photos on the walls looked like evidence in a crime scene. Their wedding album sat on the bookshelf. Was it even legal? Had she actually married him, or had she participated in some elaborate theater that only she believed was real? She went to his home office, a room she rarely entered. David was meticulous about his workspace, claiming he needed privacy for client calls and confidential medical equipment contracts. The door was usually locked when he wasn't home, but Rebecca had a key on her keychain that she'd never needed to use. Her hands shook as she turned it in the lock. The office was exactly as David kept it. Organized, professional, sparse. A desk with a computer monitor, filing cabinets, on shelves of binders labeled with medical terminology she didn't understand. Rebecca started with the desk drawers. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she knew she'd recognize it when she found it. The top drawer held office supplies. The second held files organized by year, tax returns, insurance documents, bank statements. She pulled out their joint checking account statements from the past 3 years. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transaction looked normal. His paychecks deposited every 2 weeks. Their mortgage payment withdrawn automatically. Nothing suspicious. Nothing that suggested he was funding an entire second household in New Mexico. But when Rebecca looked at his business expense reports, carefully filed in clear plastic sleeves, she noticed something odd. David had been reimbursed for hotel stays in cities across Arizona, Nevada, and California. Scottsdale, Las Vegas, San Diego, Tucson. But never Albuquerque. Never New Mexico at all. For a man who supposedly traveled extensively for work, he'd apparently never had business in the state where his other wife lived. She moved to the filing cabinet. The top drawer was labeled Personal Documents. Inside, she found their marriage certificate from 2016, signed by the officiant at the Botanical Garden ceremony. It looked official. It had a raised seal. It had their signatures. But Rebecca had no idea if it had ever been filed with the county clerk. No idea if it was anything more than decorative paper. She photographed it with her phone, hands trembling so badly the first 3 shots were blurred. The second drawer held David's personal files, his birth certificate, social security card, passport. Rebecca pulled out the passport and flipped through it. The stamps told a story of domestic travel, nothing international, just trips to Mexico and Canada over the past decade. But the dates confused her. There were stamps from Tijuana dated the same weekends David had told her he was at conferences in San Francisco. Stamps from Vancouver when he'd supposedly been visiting his sick mother in San Diego. Had anything he'd ever told her been true? The bottom drawer was locked. Rebecca tried every key on her keychain. None of them fit. She stood there, staring at that locked drawer, wondering what secrets were important enough to hide inside a home office that was already off limits. She thought about breaking it open. She thought about calling a locksmith. She thought about confronting David the moment he walked through the door that evening, demanding answers, demanding the truth. Instead, she called her father. Robert Torres had been a Phoenix police officer for 32 years before retiring to a life of golf and grandchildren. He'd taught Rebecca to change a tire, to throw a punch, and to trust her instincts when something felt wrong. When she told him what Elena had discovered, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Where are you right now?" he asked finally. "Are you safe?" Rebecca assured him she was home, alone, that David wouldn't be back until Thursday evening. "Good," her father said. "Stay there. I'm coming over. And Becca, don't touch anything else in that office. We need to do this right." Robert Torres arrived 30 minutes later with a manila folder and the kind of expression Rebecca had seen on his face only a handful of times in her life. The look of a man preparing for violence. He hugged his daughter, or then sat her down at the kitchen table. "I made some calls," he said quietly. "People I know from the department, people who owe me favors. I had them run David's name, his social security number, everything we have on him. Becca, you need to prepare yourself for what I'm about to tell you." The man Rebecca had married wasn't David Chen. His legal name was David Christopher Paulson, born in Sacramento in 1975. He'd been married to Jennifer Paulson, formerly Jennifer Morrison, since 2009. They had 2 children, ages 11 and 9. They owned a home in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, purchased in 2012. David worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative for a company based in Albuquerque, not as a medical equipment consultant. And according to county records, he'd never filed for divorce from Jennifer Paulson, which meant Rebecca's marriage was invalid. Bigamy is illegal in Arizona, and any subsequent marriage entered into while a valid marriage already exists is automatically void. Rebecca Torres had never been David Paulson's wife in any legal sense. She'd been his mistress, his secret, his carefully constructed fiction. "There's more," her father said, his voice heavy. "I had them check for any other records associated with his social security number. Marriage licenses, property records, anything unusual." He slid a printed document across the table. It was a marriage license from Clark County, Nevada. David Christopher Paulson and Michelle Kayla Rodriguez. Dated 2003. "He was married before Jennifer," Robert continued. "This woman, Michelle, she filed for divorce in 2005. It was finalized in 2006, so Jennifer was his second wife. Which makes you—" "The third woman stupid enough to believe him," Rebecca finished. Her father shook his head. "You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. This man is a professional liar, Becca. He's been doing this for over 20 years. And I'm willing to bet Jennifer Paulson has no idea you exist, same as you had no idea about her." Rebecca thought about the baby. 3 months along. A little person who would be born into this chaos, this web of deception and broken laws. "What do I do?" she asked. Her father pulled out his phone. "First, we document everything. Photographs, bank statements, every piece of paper in that office. Then we call a lawyer. Then we figure out how deep this goes. Because if he's been lying about who he is, he's been lying about the money too. And we need to know what you're legally entitled to before he realizes you know the truth." They spent the next 3 hours systematically documenting David's home office. Her father picked the lock on the bottom filing cabinet drawer with a skill that reminded Rebecca he'd once been very good at his job. Inside, they found a second passport. Same photo of David, different name. David Chen. The passport had been issued in 2015, 1 year before Rebecca met him. It had no stamps, no travel history. It was a prop, a costume piece for the character he played in Phoenix. They found bank statements for accounts Rebecca didn't know existed. A checking account at a New Mexico credit union with Jennifer Paulson listed as a co-owner. A savings account in Nevada with a balance of over $200,000. Investment accounts with holdings Rebecca couldn't begin to calculate. And they found documents related to properties: a rental house in Scottsdale, a condo in Las Vegas, a vacation property in Sedona. Properties that generated income that David had never disclosed to Rebecca. "He's rich," her father said quietly, scanning through the investment statements. "Or at least, he's got access to a lot of money that you've never seen." Rebecca felt sick. They'd talked about finances constantly. David had always claimed his consulting work was steady but not lucrative, that they needed to be careful with money, that the house in Phoenix was stretching their budget. She'd believed him. She'd economized, clipped coupons, worked extra hours at the dental office to save for the baby. And all along, he'd had hundreds of thousands of dollars hidden in accounts she didn't know existed. The final discovery came from a locked box inside the drawer. It contained 3 driver's licenses: David Paulson, New Mexico; David Chen, Arizona; and David Morrison, Nevada. 3 names, 3 identities, 3 complete lives. "Who is this person?" Rebecca whispered. "Who did I marry?" Her father put his arm around her shoulders. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're going to find out. And we're going to make sure you and that baby are protected, legally and financially. I promise you that." David wasn't due home until Thursday evening, which gave Rebecca 36 hours to decide her next move. Her father wanted her to go to the police immediately to report the bigamy and fraud. But Rebecca's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Valdez who specialized in family law, advised a different approach. "If you go to the police now, you lose control of the narrative," Patricia explained during an emergency consultation Thursday morning. "He gets arrested, everything becomes public, and you're fighting for scraps in a criminal case where you're treated as a victim but not a party. Instead, we build a civil case. We document everything. We establish what you're entitled to under Arizona law, and we prepare for the confrontation on our terms." Rebecca trusted Patricia's judgment. But waiting meant pretending. It meant acting normal when David came home Thursday night. It meant kissing him hello and asking about his week and lying next to him in bed while her skin crawled with revulsion. "Ian, can you do that?" Patricia asked gently. "Can you keep him calm and unsuspecting for a few more days while we prepare? Because if he realizes you know, he'll run. Men like this always run." Rebecca thought about the baby. She thought about the bank accounts and properties and the life he'd stolen from her. "I can do it," she said. "Tell me what I need to know." David arrived home at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, exactly when he always did after his weekly travel. He looked tired but happy, kissing Rebecca and asking about her week with the casual intimacy of a man who had nothing to hide. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his hand on her still small belly. "Any morning sickness today?" Rebecca smiled and lied. "Better. I think I'm past the worst of it." They made dinner together, pasta with vegetables, and the kind of easy meal they'd shared 1,000 times. David talked about his week, meetings in Tucson, a difficult client in Flagstaff, hotel rooms that all looked the same. Rebecca listened and nodded and asked follow-up questions, all while knowing that he'd actually spent his week in Albuquerque, with Jennifer, with their children, living a completely different life than the one he described. She wondered if Jennifer was sitting at her own dinner table right now, listening to David's lies about a business trip to Nevada, about hotel rooms and difficult clients, and how much he missed his family. Did Jennifer know about the Nevada accounts? Did she know about the properties? Or was she another victim, another woman who believed in a fiction? That night, Rebecca lay awake in the dark, listening to David breathe beside her. She thought about the past 8 years. The trips, the absences, the explanations that had always made sense in the moment. Monday through Thursday, every week, David was gone. That was 160 nights a year away from Phoenix. Plenty of time to maintain an entire second life 400 miles away. Plenty of time to be Jennifer's husband, to coach soccer games, to attend parent-teacher conferences, to be the kind of present father Rebecca had assumed he'd become when their baby was born. What was he going to do when the baby arrived? How did he plan to explain a newborn to Jennifer? Or had he planned to abandon Rebecca entirely, to disappear, like he'd probably disappeared from Michelle Rodriguez's life 20 years ago? The questions multiplied in the darkness. But Rebecca didn't cry. She was past crying. Now she was angry. Friday morning, Patricia Valdez filed a civil lawsuit against David Christopher Paulson, alleging fraud, breach of contract, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She also filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to freeze all of David's accounts and prevent him from transferring assets or leaving the state. The court scheduled a hearing for Monday morning. "He'll be served with papers today," Patricia explained. "Probably at work." "I'm sorry, Rebecca, but there's no gentle way to do this. The moment he gets those papers, he's going to know everything." Rebecca was at the dental office when it happened. She'd gone to work because staying home felt impossible, because she needed to be around people who didn't know her life was imploding. Her phone rang at 2:15 p.m. David's name on the caller ID. She let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately, then again. On the fourth call, she answered. "What the hell is this?" David's voice was strained, furious, nothing like the calm man who'd kissed her goodbye that morning. "What the hell did you do, Rebecca?" "I found out the truth," she said quietly. "I know about Jennifer. I know about the kids. I know you're not who you said you are." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When David spoke again, his voice had changed. The fury was gone, replaced by something smooth and calculated. "Becca, listen to me. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Jennifer and I, we're separated. We have been for years. I just haven't filed the paperwork because it's complicated with the kids. But I was going to tell you. I swear I was going to tell you." Rebecca had prepared for this. Patricia had coached her on what he'd say, how he'd try to manipulate her into doubting her own judgment. "You're lying," Rebecca said. "Jennifer's Facebook page says she's celebrating 15 years of marriage. Your kids live with you in Albuquerque. You've been living two lives, David. Or should I call you David Chen? Or is it David Morrison? Which one is real?" Another silence. Longer this time. When David spoke again, the smoothness was gone entirely. "You went through my office. You had no right to go through my things, Rebecca. Those files are private. You violated my privacy." She almost laughed at the absurdity. "I violated your privacy? You've been committing fraud for 8 years. You married me when you were already married to someone else. That's not a privacy issue, David. That's a felony." "I want to come home," he said. "See, we need to talk about this face to face. I need to explain." Rebecca glanced at her lawyer's instructions, written on a notepad beside her desk. "You can't come home. There's a restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of me or the house. If you try to come here, I'll call the police." She heard something crash in the background, a door slamming. "You can't do this to me," David shouted. "That's my house. Those are my things. You have no right." "I have every right," Rebecca interrupted. "And if you come near me or contact me again outside of our lawyers, I'll file a police report for bigamy. Do you understand me, David? Stay away." She hung up. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone. Her office manager, Christina, appeared in the doorway with wide eyes. Everything okay?" Rebecca shook her head. "No, but it will be. I need to make a call." She called her father. "He knows," she said simply. Robert Torres didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way. Pack a bag. You're staying with us until this is over. I don't trust him not to do something stupid." Rebecca never went back to the house in Phoenix as a resident. Her father and 2 of his former police buddies helped her pack essentials that weekend, while a sheriff's deputy stood by to enforce the restraining order. David didn't show up. According to Patricia, he'd hired a lawyer and was fighting the asset freeze, claiming Rebecca had no standing to freeze accounts that were solely in his name. "He's trying to move money," Patricia warned. "We caught some of it in time, but he's got accounts we don't know about. This is going to get ugly." It got uglier than Rebecca could have imagined.